I tried to hurry up and get a picture.
Good to go, April?
One of the buttons is not working.
Or she'll leave because it's splash pad. I couldn't go to the if you. I felt really bad, but if they do that, get the splash pad running. So my kids want to do lemonade stand. Put a call into Scott. They're hawking stuff on the street corner without a permit. Could you come pay him a visit?
Smash. I'll take care of that.
Don't think they have
Make sure we'll
peddler's
crush
license.
that dream.
You guys collecting sales tax? No.
Did you pay the man uptown?
They still haven't given me my 10%, so.
Nucky Thompson. It'll be American lemons. Good?
Yep.
Okay. It is 8:31. We will call this meeting of the Utilities Commission of the City of Mount Vernon to order on June 5th. Let's see. The clerk may call the roll.
Mr. Sayers?
Here.
Mr. Ball? Mr. Platt?
Here.
Mr. Reinhardt?
Here?
Ms. Busenberg?
Here.
Mr. Gant?
All right, let the record reflect that Mr. Ball is absent, but in his place we have Mr. Platt, who will serve as his proxy. Okay. All right, moving on to the minutes approval. Commission members, you have the May 1st meeting minutes available in front of you. Are there any additions and corrections that need to be made or corrections? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for approval.
I'll motion to approve the minutes for May 1st.
Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
A second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Minutes are approved. Moving on to the adjustment journal for May, there is none. Well, that was easy. Good job, Robin. All right. Now on to new business. I'm actually going to add an agenda item. That way we can focus on our old business entirely and not put this poor fine lady through the grueling conversation of waste hauling ordinances. So we have Mrs. Patricia Henderson at 82 Fairway Drive. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Ma'am, if you'd like to come to the podium and say your name and your address, like I just did, and then tell us what the issue is.
Patricia Henderson, 82 Fairway Drive. This issue goes all the way back to December of 2024. There was much correspondence. The beginning was a notice about high water usage. I was advised to put dye in the tank, etc. I have 4 toilets in that condo. So I did that to 3 of the 4. Nothing whatsoever showed up. I have written all of this in an email to you, and I don't have a copy of that email, so I hate to go all the way back through. There were many, many steps and parts to this. It began December 18th. Okay, at that time I did everything that I thought I was supposed to do to check why I had high water usage. My normal bill is $58.78 and has been that on auto pay for 4 years that I've lived in this condo. So when I get a bill of $1,800, I am not in Ohio. In fact, I'm on mail transfer. I don't even get this notice until the actual day that the auto pay would kick in. I would have stopped that if I could have. It was President's Day or some holiday, and I couldn't get to the bank to stop it, because I wanted to talk with you about this before you got the $1,800 that I feel is some sort of error. Now, there was one toilet in my basement where I never ever see that in my basement. And that was the culprit that was running the water with me being completely unaware. In January, early January, I believe, out of state, I called a plumber. He went over. You had shut the water off by that time. He went over and found the problem for me, put a floater valve, a float valve at the back of the toilet, whatever, stop the problem. But this is January. This is early January, and the bill has already run up to $1,800. What I'm asking for, I guess, is some mitigation on this bill, or some relief. I am a widow. I live there alone. I'm not there all of the time. I have tried to handle the problem responsibly, but it has been quite a challenge for me to do that. Is there anything you can do to help me with an $1,800 bill?
So without committing the commission to anything, as we don't have any of the information in front of us because it's not prepared for the agenda, what I'm going to have you do, I'm going to have Robin and April, you guys get all the information together and see if there are first administrative tools that can be managed, because I know we have some of those now. And then secondly, if anything that goes beyond that needs to come back to the commission, then we'll do that. Does that work? Okay. So there are basically what just happened here. There are two sets of things that we can do for you, okay? I acknowledge and empathize with your situation. All right, so there are some administrative things that the commission doesn't even have to take action on, that I, with the department and this, as the safety service director, we can assist you with, okay? So we're gonna do those first. And then if there are other things that we feel like we can either do in addition to or do in lieu of, that the commission has to take action on, those will have to be prepared separately and come back in July, because we don't have them in front of us and I can't ask the board to vote on.
And will I need to reappear?
You will not have to. It's always better if you do,
Yeah.
but you won't have to.
And in fact, I will not be in Ohio at that date.
If, then by that time, we'll have it all prepared. You just write up a summary and send it to us, and then we'll take it from there.
I will write a summary of,
You will write a summary from your perspective, and then the rest of us will do our jobs.
you know, I wish someone could help me with the email that got sent to you in February of this year. I don't have a copy of it. I don't know how to retrace it. As I said, I was not here. Can anybody find that
We may
email?
be able to help you out with that, too. I don't know who you sent an email to.
The name Robin seems familiar. I talked to,
Okay.
It was me, and I will go back and see. if I
could you
can find
find
it.
that for me? Because it's all clearly laid out in that. And at the time, I didn't have a printer, and now I can't find it from February.
We'll have it. If it was
If I
sent,
have it, I will
yeah.
email it to you.
And I had to send it personally. I don't know if you remember, but I went back and forth with trying to get it to you by your normal address. And finally, I sent it to a person, possibly to you. It went through on a personal email.
Okay,
And,
right, that'll help me when I look for it.
and your name?
My name is Robin.
Robin. Okay, that sounds familiar. Okay, then my next step is,
So, do you want to reach out to Mrs. Henderson here?
Yes.
Okay. So we will talk internally about what we need to do. And then Mr. Polo will reach out, Robin, will reach out to you and tell you what we're gonna do from the administrative side. And then if anything needs to come back to the commission, she'll let you know. And if so, we'll proceed from there.
oh, I would thank you for that. My bill at $58.78 has been paid religiously
Yeah.
ever since
We'll be
I've
able
lived
to-
in the condo.
Yeah, we'll be able to
Except
see
for
that.
this one bizarre
Sure. Yeah.
episode. A big bizarre episode.
I can imagine. So, Okay, well, anything else?
No, that's best I
Commission
can do for
members?
right now.
Anything else that you'd like to add? No. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Am I like dismissed?
You are dismissed. Or you can stay for the waste haulers stuff if
Well,
you'd like to hear
I'll
that.
just go on with a few errands, thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay. So, moving on to old business, we are going to discuss an ordinance regulating waste haulers, requiring recycling permits, mandating annual reports, and ensuring secure hauling. Members, the attachment that you have in your agenda, there has been an updated an attachment. You have that here. We will make sure that the minutes reflect the attachment. So if you're watching from home, you will see this, the updated version in the minutes. So basically, here's what we're going to do. We're going to run down very quickly through the main points of this. There are essentially, there are 9 sections. One is just a severability section, so essentially 8 sections, and talk about each of those, but not too in depth. Section 1 is just the purpose of this, which is to ensure or to enact the regulation of collection, transportation, and disposal of solid waste and recyclable materials within the city of Mount Vernon to protect public health, promote environmental responsibility, maintain clean roadways, and ensure accountability in waste management operations. Not that big of a deal. Section 2 is some definitions: solid waste, recyclable materials, waste haulers, secure hauling. So solid waste as defined by the Ohio Administrative Code. Recyclable materials, these are materials designated by the city as suitable for recycling, included but not limited to paper, plastics, metal, and glass. Waste hauler, any person or entity engaged in the business of collecting, transportation, or disposing of solid waste or recyclable material. Secure hauling, the act of transporting waste or recyclables in a manner that prevents spillage, leakage, litter, or blowing debris. And as we move forward with this, I do want to, there has been a question, is this something new? This is a new ordinance that will replace another ordinance that currently exists. We already have an ordinance in place. I think it's 755. 755. All right. So this will replace 755. A lot of this language has just taken language from 755 and kind of modernized it for our purposes and cleaned it up. Section 3, licensing of waste haulers. License requirement: no person or entity shall collect, transport, or dispose of solid waste or recyclable material for commercial purposes within the city without first obtaining a waste hauler license from the Office of Code Enforcement. So the big difference here, 1, we are requiring you to have a waste hauler license from the Office of Code Enforcement. So that's the city inspector and the assistant city inspector. We're cutting the police department out of this per their request. An annual non-refundable fee of $100 shall be paid annually for each waste hauler license. So if you are your company X, Ted's Trash, all right, I don't know, I don't care who you are, you're paying $100. If you pay it on July 1st, your next due date is July 1st of the following year. So there's no, you have to pay this, we prorate it to, whenever you pay it, you have another annual due the next year. Application process: applicants must submit a completed application, pay the required fee, provide proof of valid and separate approved waste disposal and recycling facilities, and comply with all city regulations. License display: the waste hauler license must be visibly displayed on each vehicle used in waste collection or transportation. What happens if you have a large fleet? Hang tight. Vehicle identification: all vehicles. So at the last meeting, former Councilman Mike Hillier was here to discuss what was in 755. One of those provisions did say that they require the sides of the trucks to have logos and information. That way you could contact, who's picking up the trash, whatnot. We intended that to be in the new code too, and it just, for whatever reason, didn't get transferred over. So I had reached out to him and let him know that that would be making it in here, and here it is. Vehicle identification, all vehicles used in waste or recycling operations must prominently display the company's name, logo, business address, and telephone number on both sides of each truck in lettering no smaller than 3 inches in height. Markings must be clearly legible and maintained in good condition. All right. Recycling permit. So keep in mind here, any waste hauler, there are two things going on here. There's a waste haulers application, and then there's a recycling permit. You are not permitted to haul solid waste in the city of Mount Vernon without providing recycling. So you have to have both of these. Permit requirement, any waste hauler collecting or transporting recyclable material must obtain a recycling permit from the Office of Code Enforcement in addition to the waste hauler license. A waste hauler cannot operate in the city of Mount Vernon without also collecting curbside recyclable materials. Notice the word curbside. Curbside service must be offered. That's per legislation in the city of Mount Vernon. An annual fee, a non-refundable $100 fee shall be paid for each recycling permit. Now you're up to $200. So if you are Ted's Trash, in order to operate annually in the city of Mount Vernon, it costs $200. That is cheap. Curbside recycling requirements, all haulers permitted to operate within the city are required to offer residential curbside recycling service. Recycling bins must be provided by the hauler at no additional cost to residents. Application process. Applicants must submit details regarding recyclable material, the materials collected, methods of collection, proof of bin distribution practices, and proof of disposal in an appropriate approved recycling facility that is separate from the waste disposal facility. Basically, here's why we're doing this. We don't want you to say, yeah, we collect recyclable materials too, and then you go dump it at the same incinerator. That's not what we're doing here. Are there any questions so far? Okay.
Well, sorry. Just to be clear, wouldn't it be possible for a waste hauler to subcontract the recycling out to another hauler? I think we've had that happen before, where we had Rumpke doing the recycling for one of the smaller haulers.
Yes. Yeah.
So you wouldn't necessarily have to have both permits.
The company would have to have both permits. Rumpke, in this case, would still, so let's just say, and I won't even say Rumpke, we'll just say Ted's Trash again.
Yeah.
There is no Ted's Trash, correct? Okay.
Not yet.
Yeah.
There is now.
Yeah, there is now. All right. So Ted's Trash decides that, you know, they have the waste hauler capability, but we require curbside recycling. Ted, how are you going to do this? He said, well, I'm going to third party this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ted is still getting the recycling permit. And if Ted, and this is, I don't want to call this a loophole because I don't know that anyone would do this anyway, but it's a possibility, and frankly, it's just an additional service. You can, reading this in plain language here, you can't operate a trash or a waste hauler service without recycling, but you can operate recycling without a waste hauler service. That makes sense? So in this case, we could potentially, and I don't know what the recommendation of the board would be. I would assume that we would do this, but if Ted decides, you know, he's gonna third party this with, you know, or get a contractor to come in and do recycling, you know, to meet his requirement and pay X or whatever, we may require Ted to have the recycling permit and his third party to have just the recycling permit, because that person won't need a waste hauler's permit, because they're covered by Ted's waste hauler permit. That makes sense? Or we hit them with both. I don't know. I mean, like, they are not going to be, you know, they're not going to be reporting a waste tonnage report. They're not going to be having to follow the rules that the waste hauler, this is one of those weird little where do we live in the gray here? So they're going to be hauling recyclable material. I don't know, Mr. Bacher, do you consider that waste?
Rephrase that.
So let's say that, Mr. Platt's example here, if this is a contractor that's hauling recyclable material and not necessarily like solid waste,
Yeah.
does the state of Ohio and Knox County, what are we defining solid waste as? Because if it blows in my trash, or if trash blows in my yard, I don't really care if it's solid waste or if it's recyclable material, it's still trash in my yard, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it gets to a certain point where if it's on the ground, it's just a matter of disposal at that point.
Sure.
I don't know if anyone will try to bypass this with doing this direct system.
Mm-hmm.
I will point out the irony of, so I've been in contact with companies big and small talking about this. Obviously, we held our meeting last year. I have had quite a few small companies reach out and say they could provide the service if we ever switched to one unified curbside hauler. I think it would be an interesting point to bring in front of the council if the small haulers are basically admitting that they couldn't provide this recycling service, and now once they're being held accountable, that now they need help from a third-party company to do the job that they're supposed to do in the first place. I just think that'd be an interesting point. Not that I'm suggesting that formally by any means, but obviously if they were to subcontract, as long as it's documented, which last time we had a little meeting up here and we sent out stuff and I still haven't had any more forms come in outside of the two, and one of them basically self-admitted to, oh, we take our recycling to the Apple Valley drop-off, so it's very clear that the system is insanely broken right now. So I think I would be fine with any of these third-party loopholes as long as it's well documented and your recycling is getting recycled. I don't care. So however that gets done.
And I think the administration side at that point is just up to us and how we handle it, as long as we uniformly do it.
Okay.
You good with that?
Yep.
Okay. Section 5, securing hauling requirements, load containment. All loads must be fully enclosed, tarped, or otherwise securely contained to prevent litter, leakage, or material from blowing into public or private property. Vehicle standards. Waste hauling vehicles must be maintained in good condition, have intact seals and sides, and must not be overloaded. Spill and damage responsibility. If litter spills or property damage occurs as a result of hauling activities or other ordinance violations, the waste hauler shall be financially responsible for the full cost of cleanup and restoration. Inspections. The Office of Code Enforcement may inspect vehicles for compliance at any time. Additional inspections for the replacement of a lost license or permit shall incur a $50 fee. For large fleets, additional costs may incur related charges for duplicate license and permit production. So if you have a fleet of 100 vehicles, Ted got bought out by Walmart and now he's doing well. So he gets a 100 unit fleet in here, and he's like, well, I only send 10 vehicles to Mount Vernon. I'm like, okay, well, we're fine to give you 10, stickers, if you will, for these trucks. If we catch an 11th truck routinely coming to Mount Vernon that doesn't have a permit or a sticker or whatever on it, then we may have to talk about what that looks like, right? But there are companies, and I don't care to say it, Rumpke is a large company, right? It is unreasonable for us to anticipate that we are going to inspect all of their vehicles and sticker all of their vehicles. But in turn, we should also have communication with this company, X company, any company. We should be able to know what vehicles are going to be in our community and we should know that they have been, you know, through the system, and we should know that they are permitted to operate here. So, now whether that is actually stickering the truck itself, the windshield, wherever, whatever we have to do, and that's what we do. But, and I think depending on the size and scope of the company and where they operate, how their fleet operates, we can do that on a case-by-case basis. It doesn't have to be one size fits all. Okay.
So just to make this clear, they're only paying a $100 waste hauling fee, regardless of how many trucks they have.
They're paying a $100 waste hauler fee and a $100 recycling fee. So
Yes.
each company is getting a $200, a $200 fee. They may incur more fees if there's additional inspections needed, or if we have to replace, you know, if they're coming in, they're gonna be like, well, you're gonna have to give me like 30 stickers, and we typically only give 2 or 3. We may determine that, you know, they have to pay the cost of more of those stickers.
Would we be able to do that administratively after the ordinance is
Yes.
passed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what that, you know, additional costs may incur related charges for duplicate license and permit. That's the covering of that. But that's less of a, you know, fee, and you cost more. Yeah.
One of the only concerns I have, and I'm not sure how we would document this formally. So a big part of why I've been so hyper-focused on this in the last like year or two is not only observations that I've made, but obviously since I'm the litter prevention person for our county, residents often report things to me. The problem is I always believe them. What would enforcement be like when they're like, I am in back of this company right now. I see it with my own eyes. They have trash blowing over 229. Is there a good course of method for, I know we're doing our best to like circumvent, like, you know, making the police responsible for this. Who would I, whether, you know, somebody gets fined from it or whatever, but just doing my due diligence, I would like to report everything a resident comes to me with. How would I go about doing that with the city?
That would be code enforcement. So
Okay.
specifically, for those related incidents, if there's litter, that would be through the assistant city inspector. I don't expect anybody in the community to know the intricacies of who covers what, but the assistant city inspector would cover any sort of property related, you know, property maintenance or anything like that, and that would fall, litter would fall under that.
And if you can believe it, with the growing number of both small and large curbside haulers we have in the city of Mount Vernon, sometimes they happen to tell on each other too.
Sure. I would not believe that at all.
So I just want to make sure anytime anything, because obviously it's like the same thing when I catch somebody illegally dumping at a community curbside bin. The amount of documentation I formally have to have on the spot, not being law enforcement myself, to actually find somebody is quite a lot. So I just want to make sure I can like formally document things. So obviously I can't enforce them myself.
Sure. Okay.
Will the city stickers have a number, an identification number on them?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yep. And I'll work with Scott Zimmerman and Brian Marvin to establish that process down the road. Whether that's just a, you know, logo, ID number, and basically the same way your license plate works, right? You get this color sticker for a waste hauler, and this color sticker for a recyclable, and move forward. So, other than that, so there's that. Keep moving forward into annual reporting, because this is a big one. This is one I think that you will appreciate, because we just don't get these, or if we do, we get them. Maureen randomly gets one. She's like, I'm not quite sure what to do with this, and I have to say, I'm not quite sure what you should do with it. So, but we keep them around. All right. All license due date. All license. Well, section 6 is annual reporting due date. All licensed waste haulers and recycling permit holders must submit an annual report to the Office of Code Enforcement by October 1st of each year. All right. So if you start you know, the day before, we'll give you a mulligan, all right? But anybody else,
How will this look for this calendar year? Because obviously, all these companies should be doing this in the first place. I had a small hauler call me directly when we sent out these last notices in March or whatever, saying he was kind of panicked because he wasn't sure. He's like, are we starting from a certain date? Because I don't have this detailed information, because he was a really small hauler. And I understand, like, it's really difficult for him to do that. So when October 1st of 2025 comes around,
we will, so let's just assume that this goes, Monday's council meeting. It is my intention today to ask this board to recommend this to council for their 3 readings and yada yada. But let's just say we do that today and council's like, forget 3 readings, this is amazing, this is the best piece of legislation we've ever seen. And they pass it then, and it goes into force, which if you've ever tuned in, it's not gonna happen. But, let's just, operating under that assumption, they have that much time, which is still not a lot of time, right? If you've not, you know, June to October, if you've had none of it, you're doing your job and you've had none of this planned, all right, which admittedly you should have, because these reports are required anyway, but won't get into that. The idea is to improve the system, not to just, you know, punish people. This is not a punitive measure, right? So when they send us reports, which we will expect reports, even in my joking scenario here of the guy that starts the day before October 1st, I want a report from that guy. It will be practically empty, but he will have submitted a report. And as we build upon the years, those reports get better, those reports get amended, those reports, people become more and more comfortable with that. And what's the better thing about a report is not somebody just turning in a report, but is the best information on that report. And that's what we're gonna do with working with these haulers is, you know, give me the best information, and if you get me something now that you acknowledge is, like, I need more time for this, but I'm gonna give you what I have right now, great. And we're gonna stay, my office and code enforcement is gonna stay in constant communication with, you know, all of the haulers to make sure that we're getting the best information. So no, it's not, you know, I feel like these are a couple tons off, you know, fine. Like, no, we're not trying to find somebody into oblivion.
I do find communication is very difficult with these haulers. Obviously, what we did last August was I'm brainstorming every company I can think of. I'm talking to them directly. And that's kind of the energy I came into that meeting with is, hey, I don't really care what you've done up to this point. Starting this day, I really need you guys to follow directions. And
if we give them a clear piece of legislation, and if we give them a clear point of contact, like people don't, say this like this, the police department doesn't want to deal with this, and the haulers don't want to deal with the police department. And when you create a system of, this is an outdated piece of legislation with a department that doesn't want to deal with it, with a group that doesn't want to be burdened by it, it's not working. What do you mean it's not working? Like, of course it's not going to work. It's doomed to fail. So we're going to create something that's a little bit more clean in a department that has, that is, I think, is the natural home for it.
sure.
Yeah, that is right across the hallway from safety service office. That's, you know, the mothership for it. So it's, I think this is a better flow to getting it. And ultimately, what we want to see is better service for the residents in a more, you know, efficient and effective way of delivering this kind of a service into the community.
I can't speak to how the inspection department will handle this, but they do have access to some pretty good tools for permitting and licensing that can automate renewals. So they'll set this up as an annual license that has to be renewed probably by August or October 1st of each year. And part of that renewal process would require them to fill out a report within that system. They would probably get a 90-day notification, 60-day, 30-day notification through email, automated through the system. So as long as we have the correct contact information in that system, it'll be easy. They'll have a link to go on and they can do their report. by that date. So I don't think it'll be an issue once everybody's in the system.
Yeah, hopefully it'll get everyone on the same page, because it's something I've dealt with. Really, I was speaking to one individual company around March. What's happening is you have the companies that are actually running honestly and following the ordinance, and some that are realizing. There are some companies, and I'm always on social media pages in the community.
They'll tell on themselves.
Hauler recommendations, and there are companies that are spoken very highly of in the public eye that I know for a fact are throwing recycling away.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a small hauler saying, "Why are you coming to me trying to get me to do this? It costs me money. I just get undercut by those who aren't doing it." So, yeah, I'm hoping this is a way to provide support for some small haulers.
To keep moving on that, the report contents will be total volume and weight of solid waste collected and disposed, total volume and weight of recyclable materials collected, name and physical address of all approved disposal and recycling facilities used must be separate and appropriate for each waste stream. Fleet summary, number of trucks in active operation, description of each vehicle, and the address of the locations where the vehicles are stored or housed, documentation of any spills, littering, or non-compliance incidents, and corrective actions taken. So that's just some of the information. That's not an exhaustive list, but that'll be most of it. Section 7, this is enforcement and penalties. In the event that any individual hauler or entity is found in violation of this ordinance, the following may apply. First violation is a written warning. The second violation is a fine not to exceed $500. Third violation is a suspension or revocation of a waste hauler license and/or recycling permit, plus an additional fine up to $1,000. There are separate violations for spills or damage. If any litter, spillage, or property damage is associated with the violation, the hauler shall be issued a separate violation notice and held financially responsible for all cleanup, repair, and administrative costs incurred by the city. So let's just say if somebody violated, they were on their second violation, and we hit them with a $500 fine. They also busted up something, I don't know, and we had to send them a bill for cleanup. That's separate from the $500 fine. So somebody could end up with like a $2,500 bill, 500 of it being the fine, 2,000 of it being what we, the city, had to come in and clean up and take care of, and then charge back to the company. Right now, a big problem we have with Section 755 is we don't really have a lot of that teeth in this. It goes straight to pulling your activity here, which really, I mean, one, we're reluctant to do because you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of residents that like, well, now what's going to happen to my trash? And we're reluctant to push that button. So, littering citations, littering by waste haulers shall be considered a separate offense under the city's general litter control ordinances. So these do not apply to, you driving down the road, leaving the back end open and it just flying over everybody. So these are separate violations that can be applied. So we are intending to hold people accountable. If you get complaints, let code enforcement know, we prove it, find the people, and then we fine them. Section 8, so it's only fair to have an appeals process, right? Section 8, in the event that an individual hauler or entity is found in violation of this ordinance and issued a violation, the individual hauler or entity has a right to appeal the violation. The following are the remedies available. Initial appeal to the city inspector. Appeals must be filed within 10 business days of the violation, reviewed by the Office of Code Enforcement's city inspector. So, if they don't like what he has to say, the secondary appeal to the safety service director must be filed within 10 business days after the inspector's decision. So, at that point, in certain instances, I'm the final stop this is always, of course, circumspecting the whole court process. You can always go to the courts. Or the final stop, and this is only in the instance appeals of revocation. So if we pull somebody's permit, and this would be the third violation of us taking a suspension or revocation of a waste hauler. may be heard by the city's Utilities Commission upon written request, which must be submitted 10 business days of the Safety Service Director's decision. So they have to go through kind of like a progressive discipline type situation here. And the commission shall schedule a hearing within 30 days of that. So there are some, several ways for fairness on the side of the hauler. And then finally, section 9 is just severability. So there's that. Are there any other questions? Mr. Reinhardt?
Make a motion,
Oh, well, you're going straight to it. All right, I like it.
make a motion to give this the Utility Commission's approval and move it on to council. An ordinance regulating waste haulers, requiring recycling permits, mandating annual reports, and securing hauling, and establishing appeals process.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor to recommend this to City Council. Is there a second?
I'd like to motion to recommend.
I would like you to do that as well, but I need the commission to do it.
Oh, this floor, that.
Yeah, yeah.
God, pick a floor thing. But this floor, I'm like, that's weird.
Pick a floor. Oh, God, that's my favorite.
I can second the motion.
We got a second. All right, we got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, clerk can call the roll.
Shires,
Yes.
Mr. Platt,
Yes.
Mr. Reinhardt,
Yes?
Ms. Busenberg,
Yes.
All right, motion carries. This piece of legislation will now be a formalized piece of legislation. We'll get it over to City Council. I assume it will hit its first reading June 9th. So if you want to tell any of the waste haulers to look for this, June 9th. Yep, will be just a first reading. Council will likely not schedule a committee meeting for that on June 9th, but it will be on the agenda. The first committee meeting will likely be the second, and then it'll probably be a pretty robust.
If they ask for this document,
You can give it to them, yeah.
Okay.
I would wait until it actually becomes a piece of legislation on the council agenda.
yeah.
Yeah, so then let that get fixed up. But what will likely happen is it will receive a first, just so you know the process, if anyone asks, anybody watching. It will likely receive a first reading on June 9th. The second meeting in June will likely get a second reading, and it will have a committee meeting of, who knows, 20 minutes? Depends. It depends on the response that we get. If not a peep comes out of anybody from anywhere, it'll have a 15 to 20 minute committee meeting, and we'll all stare at each other for, if there's a giant outcry and a bunch of people standing out front, then it'll have a more extensive committee meeting.
That'll be the 23rd.
That would be the 23rd. Okay, and then the final reading and the vote from council, assuming that everything just sails through, would then be that first meeting in July. So it would be effective, assuming with the emergency clause that would go with it, it would be effective upon its signature in that first meeting in July, which what's that date?
14th.
This is the 14th. They're gonna go from the 23rd all the way to the 14th.
Is it
Second.
There's the 7th.
second Monday?
Second, yeah, the 14th is the second Monday. That's that.
Yeah, it's a weird month, so you got some time. But you can always send your questions in if you got questions at mtvernonoh.gov if it's about this, or you can call in or anything like that. So
One last thing. So, since you guys already sent out a document requesting more information from haulers in March, there was one company that, like I said, they already basically admitted that they were not. Obviously, you wouldn't tell on yourself if you knew the rules. I'm sure there's a way we could actually enforce them and fine for that, but obviously it seems like a little bit overkill since we're getting our system straight. Do you think it's reasonable, just so we have documentation on it, that not only, because they did have a representative at the meeting, they might not have been paying attention, I don't know. Is there any way we could actually give them just a written warning to start off, just so we have documentation?
Yeah.
Because
Send me the information you need me to, and we'll go. Okay. Well, there's that. Thank you, council. Is there any other business that needs to become before this estimable body? See, I said that with the, shut up, David. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion,
I'll second.
second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed can stay here. We are adjourned at 9:15.
That was easy.
Did Lacey
Yeah,
get that sorted out with BKV, or do you even know what I'm talking about?